We're back, guys, I think. Sorry, Josh had some internet connectivity issues. Josh with a very strong bingo rack. Gonna assume an arable comes down. It does. He played at 2 spots over. Okay. And Jackson also with a bingo.
How much? 67.
Unsexier, I would say, is the opposite of hot. WTF.
I chose a position that extended more to the right.
Uanites. Hey MCF, how you doing? Doing all right. Just had some technical issues that we had sorted out, but yeah. Josh has the option of playing DAH and keeping NTTT. I almost never like making plays like this. I probably wouldn't in this case either, but it's always interesting trying to keep 3 Ts on your rack and like basically dooming your rack to an exchange on a future turn. I don't think he needs to do that. I think he just play hatted and get away with that. And it's never good to be forced to play through racks. Or to have future turns dictated based on what you're keeping. Like there's almost nothing he can keep with TTTD. I guess there's the E in an arable that might stay open. But no, Josh does go with hatted. Yeah, I agree with hatted. I think that you need to keep your flexibility open as much as possible. NT is a perfectly good leave. Jackson's gonna bingo. This is one of those times, by the way, that if I were Josh and I didn't know duelers to be good for certain, I would have held. Like, I think I even would have held in this case. I would be reasonably sure of duelers, but I would have held anyway. Probably wouldn't have challenged, but I probably would have thought about it just because of how bad duelers is and how bad the second best play is, because duelers is the only bingo there. Joshua Tarzana. Play a Zan, you can play Tarzan. Just play ZA. Kind of leaning towards ZA here, actually. Josh needs to maximize his bingo percentage as much as possible, and Jackson needs to, by the way, needs to press spread here. He can't really start blocking the board and try to like win this game by 80. I don't think that's wise given the tournament situation. Is Tarzana actually a real city? I'm pretty gullible, so I might believe that, but 40,000 people. I'll take your word for it. It must be in SoCal because I know NorCal pretty well, or at least in Middle Cal. It's I guess I don't know all of NorCal. NorCal's huge. But yeah, I think I prefer. Yeah, Azan keeps too many scoring spots, and the leave isn't really. I mean, the leave is pretty good still. You could play Azan if you want to. Scary. You don't really care about spread, but Jackson does. Might give you some future equity potential. Jackson or Josh does have ZA lined up. Uh, Jackson is probably gonna bingo. I can't exactly see his tiles, but I think I can see them, and they look bingo-y. Oh, it's a Y. Okay, maybe not. If he has Pickney, then I don't think that's gonna have a second bingo. He might just play it for 60. I wouldn't recommend it though. It's one of those situations where if that is a Y and that remains open, but he doesn't have a bingo. Oh, it's not. Oh, is that removed? Yeah, it was removed, wasn't it? Well, it shows you what I know. Josh does go with the Zon. And that just gives Jackson peaky. Yeah, I'm gonna have a hard time with those longer words that are removed. Like the shorter ones I've memorized pretty well, but stuff that's low prob like that, I actually have a really hard time remembering. I think I would have actually played it if it were an available bingo. I remembered that Pickaninny was removed, which is stupid because that's never gonna show up, but I didn't remember that one was. I suspect we're gonna still have a year or two where some of these words that were removed that are more obscure are still gonna be remembered, and where some of them are gonna get played. Jackson has pancakey lined up. It's not too implausible, I guess. Could be like um, waffly, crepey. So if you think about it in that sense, pancakey isn't that bad. But this game does not work based purely on logic. So yeah, he is PE lined up. He's gonna play peaky. No pancakey. I feel like pancakey makes more sense than waffly and crepey do, from like a pure cooking perspective. So Josh down over 150. He could play Tangler, but that would basically give up on the game. Probably needs to get rid of his Y, even at the cost of scoring points, and try to balance, basically maximize bingo percentage, while still keeping the board open. So probably gonna want to keep that E open. Maybe something like, hmm. I don't know. It's obviously a pretty tough situation. There's not a lot of plays that you're exactly in love with here. Maybe Sly. Um, he is going to play Tangler. I think that his odds of winning this game at this point are pretty low, and that he's kind of going for spread. Not necessarily going for spread, but going for future options where Jackson's going to have to sacrifice spread. Jackson draws the second blank. I think that's his rack. Not really a need to bingo immediately here, especially with two blinds. There's no rush. Jackson's up by over 120. Josh is going to keep the board open for him in all likelihood. Different options here. You can play. I never like playing the blank off in these sorts of situations and giving your opponent the information that you have the other one. I think that information is just too useful. Like you could play something like Shav or Vocab, but I just wouldn't. In terms of points and leave, they're perfectly acceptable, but I don't think I would. I would much prefer something doing like this, or shove without the blank, or ba and keeping both. I think that keeping information is a very underappreciated aspect of Scrabble. Oh, that's an N. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, you can just play Vin. You could have played Vinca as well, but I think Van is fine. You could have played Bach. That's another option. I probably should this Bach. But he likes to play Van. Josh plays Pokey. Pokey, this reminds me of, like, the lighting on this board isn't great, so when I saw that, I first thought it was an F, and he played Foki for a second. I actually lost a game, pretty critical game, because of that missing, because of missing a letter like that. My opponent played an invalid word that I thought was bogey, and it turned out to be a phony. And then he bingoed 3 times in a row. Because the lighting was really bad, we were in a situation where we had a flickering lamp at nationals, and yeah. And I lost the tournament on spread. So yeah, he's just like, "Oh, you thought that was a word," and like, no, I did not think that. I don't know, Logey or whatever you played was a word. I don't even remember what it was anymore. Josh was, as pointed out, with the inopportune draw, although he probably wasn't going to win this game anyway. Jackson looking at this as an opportunity to make back all of his spread. Maybe and more if you can. Again, he should be willing to risk some winning chances. Like, he should be willing to risk the miracle comeback here. Given his spread position, he needs to be able to risk stuff. He wants to win this game by over 150, especially with this rack and this opportunity. Like, you need to push. So he plays Hob. Fine. He could bingo here with biochips, but there's no need to do that. He's gonna probably get to play bingo on a future turn, and he doesn't need to blow up his rack in that to that capacity. Josh, not really any good options here. Probably gonna exchange. He could play through with no, I guess. I wouldn't recommend it. He does have the case A, and there aren't a lot of vowels in this pool, actually. There are 28 unseen tiles and 10 vowels. I guess that's not that bad. But not a lot of bingo tiles either, for what it's worth. Yeah. Only 1 N left, no L's, no A's. It was VWWQJ, so the bag is a little bit heavy. He does elect to exchange. Jackson without a bingo still. He may actually press a little bit more than usual to try to draw one. We'll see. He doesn't necessarily have to. I mean, he's not going to play that. He's probably going to play like OW or WO. Lands really aren't very good here. Considering EW, there are no L's left. There is an S left. He does go with EW, mostly trying to set up a lane. There is an N left, but there's only one, and there's no L's. There is an S, but if Josh burns the S for that, he's probably okay with that. There are D's for oaked, which is part of the problem. Josh does have the D for oaked, probably gonna block it. Might not. His highest scoring play is gonna be ads, but ads is gonna leave probably something that he doesn't want to leave, so he's going to consider blocking and probably just keeping AD for next turn. He could play DO as well and just block the line entirely and make the lane a lot worse. He actually is going to go all in to play Dotard and just go all in to block. I'm not really sure if I agree with that. I guess he can't win the game anyway, so he's going to try to use the spread advantage he has to try to win future games. Maybe he also just didn't see ADZ. So we could burn the blank here. We could see Jackson just burn the blank with like a Hito here. Oh, I guess he has J. Oh, he doesn't have JO anymore. He could just play Juko off as well, and he does. Joshua Bingo. QIIIISU. Dwight was surely well. Josh knows that Jackson's range is very, very strong, and he doesn't want to leave something that's an easy parallel like that. So the reason why he did that is because he knows that Jackson's range is insane, and that yes, he's taking a huge hit to his rack, but he's also playing defense. So I think I'm not sure if it's better or not. Maybe it is, but there was certainly reasons for Josh playing that. It's not just he wasn't trying to do it to turn over tiles. He was doing it purely to block. So I could just play QIS here. Yeah, it also may be that he's not that interested. But I think he is, actually. I think he's trying to conserve spread. I don't think that Dotard is the kind of play you make when you're not interested. Oh, he's just going to block. So he's going to sacrifice some points to continue trying to block the parallels to Dotards. So this sacrifices, 9 points to keep a really terrible lead, but to make bingoing a little bit harder. It's not going to matter here because Jackson did draw the M. So he's going to be able to bingo. And may choose actually not to. He doesn't necessarily have to bingo in this spot. Probably going to, but I don't think it's mandatory. He could play something like MOI, for example. It would make some sense. Or item. Probably not diatom. That being said, I would still be surprised if he doesn't bingo. I think he's going to. I'm sure he sees stuff like motives. Yeah, he's just gonna play motives or motive or something. I don't know what the blank is. I don't think it really matters. So Josh is now down by 189. Given spread now, you can think of Jackson as being up roughly 30 in terms of the overall tournament spread, which is what matters here. Again, they're playing best of 11, so it's going to be 4.5, 4.5. There's 2 games left, so the spread is going to be a huge deal, which is, again, what's informing almost all of these plays. At this point, when the game is this lopsided, you're not thinking at all about winning the game. You're thinking entirely about spread, and probably were even when the game was close. At least Jackson is, because, again, the spread matters for Jackson. Matters less for Josh. Josh is mostly just playing for rating, but he's trying to counteract Jackson playing for spread. Josh actually drawing pretty well to IIIU. That being said, the rack, even with like one of the best draws in the bag, his rack is still atrocious. Not a lot of great options here. Just stuff like knit, stuff like ruin. You do want to look for out in twos, so you're looking for plays that play 2 eyes. Not necessarily to play them, but to save them for next turn. So there's Ruing, for example, keep TITI. You could play Ignite right away. Although that doesn't leave any outs, I don't think. Play Tui. Does that leave anything? No. So it's just Ruing, and I think that even TT gets blocked. Oh, Ignite leaves PIU. Okay, so Ignite leaves PIU with Peaky, and it leaves Uni through Ignite. So that is an out and two. That will get hit by whites on the left side, though, by Jackson for like almost 40, or actually exactly 40. Well, it might be Bynack. It actually might be. Getting Jackson 2 turns isn't great. But it still might be NIT, and just living with the fact that your rack is a total disaster. If he does that, then Jackson's gonna play like. What is Jackson gonna play? Just WE or something like that, and then play and outplay. I mean, that's not inspiring, so if that's what he's gonna do, then I guess NIT is worth it. Because Jackson's plays are a lot worse. They're not that good. I'm just gonna ask championship player. Championship player should be pretty good at making these sorts of determinations. Yeah, it does say that Nit is actually the best line. Just because white is so much better than everything else. That being said, championship player could be wrong because it plays out in threes very badly, and this is an out in three if it's white. Jackson has no need to go out in two anymore. So maybe a little bit closer. There also is Li Tai. I didn't see that as a secondary out. So Ruing is out in two. Ruing followed by either TITI or Li Tai. He could also play Li Tai right away. Jackson's rack is EEIRTW. Ruing does not. Does Ruing have a second spot? Probably not. So yeah, it's just Ruing and then Jackson blocking, or Li Tai, then Jackson blocking Ruing, and then an outplay. Something like TEW. That's also a way that this game can go that would be perfectly reasonable. Honestly, for me, at this situation, it would be very difficult for me to actually calculate every single point. Like, it's just so unlikely to matter. And it's so unlikely to matter, and in reality, Josh is playing for Sith. Like, Josh doesn't get any equity by going 1 and 2 in this set, really. Like, he doesn't win, he doesn't advance to finals, he doesn't make any money off of it, and he doesn't get any rating off of it either. So it's hard for him to probably put the same amount of effort in that I would. He does play Nit. I'm not as altruistic as Josh, though. So, yeah, not a lot of great options for Jackson. They're all like 20-point plays that go out in two. Best option is actually ET, blocking stuff like UGH, which isn't even that good. But yeah, just not a lot to pick from here. TEW is reasonable. CI is reasonable. They're all pretty much the same, actually. There are literally, according to the computer, literally 12 different plays within 3 points of each other in the second game, so it doesn't really matter. There might be some cleverness that can be played as well. I'm assuming, by the way, I didn't think it was going to matter, but I'm assuming that the blank is an S in motives. It could be a D, in which case WE down there would be reasonable, and then you could play tire, or you could play tire first and then play WE and out. But I'm going to assume that's an S. It would make more sense to be an S, but it could be a D. It's very interesting to have a position where the primary theme in this position, but it is the primary theme in this position, is to block UGH for 9 points. That sets up absolutely nothing, but that's kind of what you're supposed to do here. I mean, I guess it's not that big of a deal because he has Nug and Nu for 8. Why would you do that over Cat? I don't even know. I guess you need this spot for the overlaps. Okay. Jackson's spending a little bit, a lot of time in this, and actually coming up with the computer preferred play of UT. Setting up Weir on top for 24 and out. Nothing Jack. I mean, he could block with just dropping the G, but it's not worth it. At least I don't think it's worth it. Yeah, it's not worth it. He's gonna play GI probably. Could play DUIT, I guess. Probably just GI and then Weir. That's how I would forecast this game going. Both players taking all of their time to actually play the end game, which is impressive, more than I would be doing. Especially when you're playing this quantity of Scrabble. This is just too much Scrabble for me. Both of them are on their like 40th game over 3 days or something like that, which is a lot. Weir comes down. So 516 to 320. So this puts Jackson ahead in spread by roughly 50. I don't know the exact number, and maybe I should try to find the exact number after the last game. Or, after the next game, assuming that Josh doesn't win small, then spread is going to become relevant.
Play Za, keeping Antra. I can play Tarzan. Play Tarzan.
Yeah. I don't know the results of the other set either. Maybe that Sid's made a giant comeback. I kind of doubt it, but yeah, maybe if Sid's run off a bunch of games in a row, then this is becoming less relevant. But I'm going to assume that Sid didn't run 4 games off in a row against Noah.
So 516 through 20? Yeah. What's the spread now? Unless I'm forgetting something, I think I'm like up 50 or like up 150. I don't know. Do you guys have a
Yeah, no, I know. But if Sid ran off 4 games in a row, Joel, then this doesn't matter. Sid needs to win at least if Sid makes it like loses 6-4, then the spread of this game doesn't actually matter. The spread only matters if, uh, yeah, the spread only matters if,
It's 4-4-1 now.
yeah.
So I can submit all results now because it's spread.
No, it's a tie series then. Oh, okay. I see. What's the spread right now?
Wait, why does that? I'm gonna check. I think I'm up 140, but we'll see.
140, yeah.
Something like that. I mean, yeah, we should confirm that now.
Jackson, he thinks it's Jackson plus 48.
Who says that?
Kenji.
Oh, okay. I probably just forgot something. That makes sense. At least we got like end games now, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, 11.
Okay, they are checking. Also, there's part of me that hopes that it's not Noah 6-0 and then Sid and Noah play again. That would be kind of anticlimactic, sort of, or at least it would be hard to. Series cannot be tied. No. I actually don't know if Josh. What happens if there's a tiebreaker? Like if the series ends 5-5 plus 0, I don't know what happens. I guess it's always a possibility. Yeah, I guess it can be tied. I don't think you would run a tiebreaker unless it's specified in the rules. Like if their tie is set, you would probably run it as a tie. If there's no tiebreaker specified after spread, and I'm guessing there's not.
Alright, we're gonna go somewhere.
Cool. There's a second, maybe second cups closes.
Older player wins.
Where? Was this game close?
Sherbrooke?
Yeah.
No, this game wasn't close.
Most of you probably don't even know who the older player. Well, I guess most of you probably do. Not everybody in the chat, I think, is going to get right who the older player is in this group. I don't think it's obvious if you don't know. I mean, I do know, but
23, 81 plus 84 after 7.
Take your guesses, yeah.
And then we'll come back.
It's actually a pretty big difference.
That way.
Most handsome player wins.
Two,
I don't know who wins that either, Mr. Kitty.
And just to let you know, I gave that last game
plus 130.
5.
Do a poll. Chat gets to vote who wins, yeah.
I feel like I might.
Well, chat's going to vote for Josh, obviously.
I'll see you later.
132. So it should be plus 64.
Vigorous round of rock, paper, scissors. Actually, in Toronto, which is not that far from where they are, they did run a rock, paper, scissors tournament. Like, I know they do have RPS tournaments, and I know that they're in Toronto. They're not that far away. Okay, Jackson's plus 64. Okay, I didn't really count Josh, so I was estimating for the last game, which I didn't even record, and then forgot what the score was. So, okay, plus 64.
Fourth game, you got 80. Fifth game.
Okay, Noah won. I'm assuming, so Noah won, but he won by like, okay, 6-1. So Sid is behind.
Seventh game, you got 80.
So it's between Sid and Jackson. Jackson needs to win the set. 6-2 or 6-1 isn't relevant. Yeah, they're both the same. Both of them put Noah behind, and if Jackson wins, Jackson will win the tiebreaker over both of them. So Jackson just needs to win the set. Because if Jackson's 1 and 2, it doesn't matter.
So how many games do we have scheduled for the final today?
Sid and Noah are going to a cafe. Interesting.
We're so early, like we have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday before we all go to league tours.
Well, it might be 2 more games for us.
Okay, I think it's plus 65 for me. Is that what you got?
65?
Wait.
We're gonna go and
It's plus 64.
250,
wait, 64?
330, 377. Yeah, I'm getting 65 for me.
Wait, is this
plus
spread?
3 after 5 for me? Or minus 3 after 5 for you?
I don't know.
Wait, is it spread for the series or spread for overall spread?
Series.
Wow. I
So
didn't know.
just like
Overall spread.
well, it makes sense. Like every series you
I'm
just
aware.
have a tiebreaker.
Okay, so okay, fuck you. Okay, anyway. So is he? Fuck you.
Like yeah, it's like every series you have to have a winner, and so the winner's gonna be.
Yeah, we should have done a
tiebreaker.
12th game because it's only gonna be one more game. So we should have done that, but whatever. We should have.
Knowing Josh and Jackson, the way that,
Should have
especially the way that
because
Josh
otherwise
thinks of
it's
everything as a
to break
rivalry,
five tiebreaker.
Josh is going to probably want to win the set more than
One more
I
game
would
left.
in Josh's shoes. Josh really,
No,
even though there's like, for me it's incentive.
No.
Yeah, no, if Jackson wins, he played no in the final. So it's just between,
Okay.
it's just between Jackson and Sid.
What's
Yeah.
the actual spread?
Mitch, not Mitch.
No, I got that.
I thought it was
You don't
140.
know who.
Yeah, no, Sid would have needed to win 3 games at least, and I think 4 actually,
I wanna watch your game.
to make that to make that competitive.
You guys can also like do that out. Maybe not. Maybe that Wi-Fi won't.
If Jackson wins the set, he actually passes Noah even, which might matter for like first and seconds, I would imagine. But yeah, Jackson has the tiebreaker on everybody. He just needs to, he just needs to win the set. 64 is over 2 games is actually not a small amount. Like if it's plus 64, that's a pretty sizable difference. Because most of the time they're evenly matched enough that most of the time they will split
I
games,
needed Sid to win.
or at least half of the time they'll split games. And especially if both of them are taking spread into account, I think it's actually most of the time they will split games. Because Jackson's going to be playing a little bit more defensive now, and Josh, in theory, should be playing a little bit more aggressively.
Overall.
So again, it just depends on how much Josh is factoring that in, because Josh has nothing personal at stake here. Since there's no money for like winning the set or anything like that. There is something to be said if people do host a format like this, there's something to be said for the idea of making cash prizes dependent not just on overall placement, but on winning each set. Like you just win $100 for winning each set, just to incentivize people for not tanking at the end of tournaments, and for taking each set as seriously as possible. I think it's actually pretty important if you make sets, not games. Games are pretty irrelevant. People can tank games, and it's not really a big deal. But people cannot tank sets. All right, looks like we're starting a new game. Attach money to everything. Yes, that's how capitalism works. We attach money to everything. That's how I work too. I want everything to be monetized. The world would, well, not the world, but Scrabble would be better if more things were monetized. All right, Jackson with over raw on his rack. Not the worst rack to pass with, honestly. There's actually a lot of 8s in that rack. But he plays Avower, which makes sense. Could play Reavow. Might actually prefer Reavow slightly. Yeah, maybe Joel. It doesn't have to be a lot. It just has to be enough that people aren't going to want to tank them. Yeah, if you made it like, I don't know, if you made it like half the entry fee or something like that, that's enough. Not half the entry fee, like half of, if you make it like, I don't know, half of the entry fee divided by the number of rounds. So in this case, like a sixth of the entry fee. So even if you made it like $20, that would be enough to disincentivize tanking. That would be enough. All right, Josh plays tops. If that were an A, I mean, oh, they both played vertically. I keep forgetting. I have the worst time seeing the end of Jackson's rack. I think it's that. So this is one of those positions where you should fish not because you love fishing, but because there's not really any other options. Like, Jackson's not really doing this because he thinks that all of his bingos are going to play, because they're not. But he's doing it because this scores 15 points, and everything else scores not much better and keeps much worse leaves. So even though it's, quote, a fishing play, because it's a not super high scoring play that doesn't really, you know, even though that plays off like 2 tiles, it's not really a fishing play. It's a play that scores and keeps a decent lead. So he plays keg. Makes sense.
Good one.
Josh plays unify fairly quickly, which also makes sense. He could just fish the Y off as well if he wanted to. I think both plays are okay. I think I probably prefer unify to fishing, but fishing isn't terrible. Jackson setting up toke probably. Thinking about that. Could also drop the N if he wants to. He could play token. But unless just play toke. Makes sense. And most of the time, what you're doing here is, again, hoping to draw a bingo, but if your opponent has a bingo, like in this case, then you're going to get a lot of floaters to play through. So that's one of the benefits to playing, to keeping good leaves and fishing in situations, even when all your bingos don't play. Because if your opponent bingos, then a lot more of your bingos will play. So Josh knows that Jackson has a strong range, but he's not going to not bingo. So gonna probably just play listers here. Could even consider trainless. Just opens a lot less. When you know you're up against a pretty strong range, leaving lots of floaters isn't really what you want to be doing. But it could play listers as well. Listers is 10 more points, and that reason alone is pretty significant. He does need to know that toker is a word. It's not obvious that toker is a word to everybody, but I think he will know that toker is a word. He is going to play trainless. Interesting. So he sacrifices 10 points to do that. Jackson does have a bingo, but it's a lot worse than it would have been if he... Well, not a lot worse, but pretty significantly worse. Trainless is pretty new. I don't think it's that new, but you might be right. I feel like I felt pretty confident that trainless is a word, and I haven't studied nines that recently. Anyway, he is gonna bingo. He could just play sentries, just probably what he's gonna end up doing. Treants would also be okay, but I think sentries is gonna be the most likely bingo to come down. We could look it up, Elder Word, if you really are interested in what the need for a word like trainless is. Oh, wait, I got his rack wrong again. Okay, so he plays resident.
Wait,
Makes sense. He can play inserted as well.
train what?
Might prefer inserted slightly, but they're pretty close.
134, 115?
Yeah.
Trainless is actually something that describes wedding dresses. The train is the like fluffy bottom part of the train that spreads out when the bride has a wedding gown. The train is that big flowery thing in back that the bride often has. So wedding dresses are either train or either have a train or don't have a train. Yeah, just like Churro said, Churro is more knowledgeable about this than I am, obviously. Most of the time when there are less words that don't make sense, there's some alternate meaning. At least a lot of the time there are. Otherwise, a lot of them seem silly. Some of them still actually are silly, but most of them have alternate meanings that make more sense than something like trainless would, as in without a train, like the trainless tracks. But yeah. Josh has wireman he could play. I'm pretty sure he sees it, but he's looking for something better. Or he's thinking about not playing it at all. He could just play wire on top of the R in resident, which is just as good, if not better. And I might actually prefer wire. The more I think about this. I mean, we could check pre-united as well. I don't. Pre-unite seems like a pretty silly word, but it probably has to do with pre-unite. Why not wireman? The scoring spots to the R in resident and the W in wireman seem kind of not ideal. You're only scoring 37 more points, keeping MER blank, which is roughly worth 37 points, I would guess. ER blank is usually worth 35. The M probably helps that slightly. So between the defense and the like points and leave aspect, I think you can make a case for wire. I think it's pretty close. I don't think it's like a huge mistake to play either one. But yeah, it is the free W. It's more the R on the top that I'm worried about Elder Word. It's more that R and resident that's gonna get hit pretty hard by lots of stuff. There are lots of 40, 50 point plays that the R can hit. Whereas the W, usually you're only gonna score like 30, 35. Less of a big deal. The floaters for bingos, that's also a factor, yeah, for sure. The IREM are now floaters. It's a pretty big deal. The average score for Jackson after Wireman is just much higher. He plays with white instead. I'm not sure why. I'd have to ask Jack or Josh why he would do that. I would probably prefer wire over white. I think it's just better in most reasonable ways. The T is probably better for Josh in terms of hitting a bingo and hitting that spot. And the R is better for Jackson in terms of a random rack hitting for 40 points or something like that. Not a big difference, but it's one of those plays where I think that wire dominates white despite the fact that they're pretty close to equivalent plays. Jackson plays vert. Again, it's much easier for Jackson to hit that R than hit that T. I don't actually know what his other tiles are. Yes. That maybe? I don't know. I have a hard time seeing exactly what Jackson has there, but so predictably, Josh does draw a bingo again. So you can play limpers. He can play. Yeah, probably just limpers. Is there any reason not to bingo? Probably not. Yeah, not really any reason to forego the bingo this time. Meeg HSL. Okay, thanks, Elderword. Yeah, okay, so I actually did get the last track correct, I think. Wonder what Josh is thinking about here. Maybe thinking about whether Toker is a word or not. If he's not common in Toker, he can play stuff like Imperils or Imperial. You can also play limpers over here, although I think that's just a lot worse. Yeah, I'm a joker, I'm a toker, I'm a midnight smoker. Yeah, it has shown up in his streams before. I'm pretty sure he knows it. But I am wondering what he's thinking about then, if he does know it. Because, like, if he knows it, I don't think there's much choice. Limpers just scores a lot better, and it's a lot better positionally, too. I can't really make a case for any other bingo. Maybe he thinks it's maybe just limper and limpest, and that limper maybe is an adjective. Oh, he's thinking about strainless. I don't know if strainless is a word. Is strainless a word? I would have to hold this a long time. It's not a word. I don't think that Josh knows either. I've never studied the tens. I would have no idea here. I would be thinking entirely based on what would strainless mean. I would give some idea as to whether Josh is going to have insight on this or not. What would strainless mean? We could look this up, as always. Strainless. I mean, Google says it's at least okay. It's 200,000 Google hits, which is pretty good for a less word. Without strain, without tension, particularly in a chemical compound. So if something is like covalent, it has strain, and if it doesn't have strain. Strainless rings as well. But yeah, strainless rings in a chemical concept. It's kind of plausible. Yeah, it's an engineering concept too. It would be tough. Like if you told me on Google that I had 200,000 Google hits and that the Google hits were, I might not challenge it. But 200,000 is usually enough. But that being said, it's a chemical word. 200,000 for a chemical word is pretty low. Most chemical words that are in the Scrabble dictionary have to have like 1 million. It's a different criteria based on the way that Google works and Google algorithms work. WTF can tell you all about this, but so can I to some degree. We've took a long time going through chemical words and deciding which ones were common and which ones weren't. But yeah, chemical words in general are going to show up more on Google than they show up in real life. So because it's mostly a chemistry-based word, I'm not surprised that it's 200,000. But 200,000 generally is enough in Scrabble for things that are not chemical words. All right. Jackson knows Josh's exact rack now. So I guess it's not his rack. Shame L's is his rack. Oh, it's not his rack. What is his rack? Shame LG. Okay. That is his rack. That makes sense. So Jackson knows his exact rack. He knows that he's not going to be able to stop Josh from bingoing. But when you know somebody's exact rack, you can make a lot more creative options than you otherwise would. So like this becomes more plausible now. This bingoes with quite a bit. Play whelm. Probably not. You're looking for, can I set up a spot that Josh cannot hit? Or that Josh will have to sacrifice a lot to block. That makes sense. I'm not sure that's going to apply here, but you are definitely looking for stuff like that. From Jackson's point of view, you know that you're not going to be able to block everything. And you probably aren't even going to try. Like, you're not going to try to block. You're not going to hope that Josh misses Imperils and Imperial. He's going to find that stuff. So, yeah, he's looking at Whelm. If he just fishes the H, let's see, what does he hit? Fishes the H. Because he knows he's going to get a lot of lines, too, which is the thing. He knows there's going to be a lot of floaters next turn, so fishing is a lot more appealing than it normally would be. He's just going to go with Whelm. I would have definitely permuted all of the 7s and 8s that he could have hit after HOW. Definitely would have gone through the entire bag and gone through each tile and see what I could have hit. Trainless is good, yes. Trainless is good. So Josh is going to bingo, obviously, probably with limpers, although I said that last turn, but I don't think he doesn't know limpers. Again, he might think it's just limper and limpest, but no, he plays limpers. Yeah, that makes sense. Trainless was a disconnected 9-0, yes. He sacrificed 10 points to do it. He could have just played listers in the same spot that he played limpers, but it was a disconnected 9. So he played for the content / style. You see Jackson with the blank. It's nice 0, except the fact it's gonna probably cost him the game. between this trainless and simpler, if Josh loses this game, and he's probably an underdog right now, it's going to be mostly because he played that. Although Josh did draw pretty well there. He's a Y away from Yarzite, which is a fun little word that shows up sometimes. Jackson has graduals. He's probably going to be looking for better than that, but there really isn't anything better than graduals. But yeah, no, Josh will. If Josh loses this game, it's entirely his fault. And I think even he'd admit that. This is, again, why it may be better. I mean, I think you may have done this anyway, but this may be why it's better to actually put some money on other sets that don't matter. Fix for exahertz. Yeah. Good fix for fish for a lot of things. Fish for Yarzite. Probably some 9s and 10s to fish through even. Could set something up and fish for, I would guess. I think, isn't rheumatize a word? Or rheumatize is a word. You could play MA and fish for rheumatize. RHEUMATIZ. I have no idea what that means. So he has DAG set up. I'm guessing he's not sure of graduals. I'm not sure what graduals means. I know it's a word. When you're an expert, you usually study all the words that take S that are not necessarily intuitive. And this is one of them. The part of mass between... Okay, so it's a religious term. That makes sense. No, he has graduals lined up. I think maybe he's probably not positive, but he's probably thinking it's probably a word and is trying to debate back in his head whether it's a word. Looks like he's going to play it, though. He's looking at it like he's going to play it. Nope, he's going to play DAG.
213 to 232.
Yeah.
It would have been interesting if he somehow made the U in his rack, if he played Dagu or something like that. It would have been interesting if Josh would have found rheumatiz or not. I don't know if Josh knows it, and I don't know if, even if he knows it, I don't know if he would have found it, but would have been interesting. stands now, he's probably just going to play something like Fizz. Maybe Zapta. Something like that. Jackson has Cougars lined up. He also has some other bingos. Guanacos. Cagoules. Stuff like that. Might try coagulas, but coagula is the plural of coagulum. But probably not. Might be a 9 through AL as well. So, as standard, when you see racks like this, you want to get rid of the H, you want to get rid of the Z. You can keep the H if you have a really good Z play, because the H works okay with tiles like that. You can keep like AEHRT or EHIRT, and that's all right. It's not as good as getting rid of the H, but it's still pretty decent. He's also going to be looking for plays that maybe have zither in them. Excuse me. Calabogus. Wow. Okay, I did not know calabogus. It's also probably a newer word because I studied the nines and I don't know that. But yeah, Josh plays Zaire. I'm guessing he just missed Fizz and Zite and Zaptier. They're both not the easiest words to find. I'm not sure that those plays are. Yeah, it's 2016. I didn't study 2016, so that makes sense. Jackson just plays Cougars pretty quickly. He could play Gauchos, but that leaves a U, and there's a J and a Q out for putting the U here. So he doesn't. Well, Cougars puts it there too. Putting a U there is pretty scary because of that J and that Q. Turns out that Josh doesn't have either of them, but the J and the Q, there are a lot of four-letter words that go QU or JU. He's Canadian, so he has no Calabogus. Calabogus might. I think Calabogus is actually the best play here. I would say that Cagoules is probably the second best play. I would be really scared after a 5-tile draw with a J and a Q in the bag of playing a U in that spot. I would definitely be sacrificing points to avoid it. But it's going to work out. Josh doesn't really have a play there. The best plays, shaken not stirred, were through the P and limpers in the middle of the board. They were Fizz, P-H-I-Z, or Zaptieh, Z-A-P-T-I-E-H. At least according to the computer, but I happen to agree with the computer in this case. So Josh, down 21. He's going to have a lead after this play. Could just play NOH. That would make some sense. Could do Hone as well on the top of the board. Mostly you just want to get rid of your H and unduplicate your N. So any plays that play off HN are probably the plays you're looking to. Might consider getting rid of an E ideally too, but it's not that big of a deal. Duplicate E's are not ideal, but they're okay. Revoke his citizenship for not knowing a Canadian word. Is that actually... I don't think that counts as a Canadian word, really. He does play no. Makes a lot of sense. EENT is a lot worse than usual because the lines on this board don't really work with it, but it's still a serviceable enough leave. There's still plenty of things you can draw. There are also no S's out. What percentage of the time would Nigel play Calabogus? I'm going to guess really high. Assuming that Nigel has studied the nines more recently than I have. If I had studied the nines and gone through the nines again, I would expect myself to find stuff like that. It's not really that low probability. It shows up enough. I would have studied it. If you studied it, it's something that you would look for. I guess the blank is still a B. That's pretty tough. So maybe not. But CAL, you are looking for CAL words for sure. There's stuff that's similar to like Callaloo's. I would expect him to find it all the time. And I would expect some other players to find it too, some of the time. Especially the people who study nines. Joel's in chat. I actually wonder, Joel, do you think you would have found Calabogus? I'm just curious. I think physics would have found Calabogus as well. Okay, cool. Yeah, so Joel did find it. Yeah, as a blank maybe, but with a blank probably not. That makes a lot of sense. I think I would probably be in the same boat if I studied it, but I never studied it. All of my nines reviews was from the 2010/12s. But yeah, the number of people who are going to find Calabogus is very few. It's Joel and Nigel and some of the Collins players. Less than 10 people, I think, would have found Calabogus. Noah might. Maybe. Maybe not, honestly. I don't know. Noah's studied a lot less lately. And it's a newer word. Jackson just drops down IT. Makes sense. I could play Aji as well. That's kind of his other alternative, but you do want to take that spot out, probably. There are still some kind of hefty things that can fit there. You do have all the eyes, though, actually, so maybe not. Yeah, he does play a lot of clabbers. It's true. I may have preferred Aji there, actually, now that I look a little bit more. But ID is perfectly reasonable. There's still things that can be played there, but you do want it. Most of the time, that spot's going to be staying open, so I think that you want to leave it open for yourself since you have all of the eyes. Jackson has 3 eyes. Those are all the eyes in the pool. Josh has cutoffs lined up, which pretty solid. Pretty tough time find too. It's not something that's easy to find, but I expect that he's going to play that. Looks pretty good. Very good example of an extension. It's a very difficult thing to see, but okay, he's lining up something else now. I hope he's not lining up count-offs, because that's going to get challenged off pretty quickly. Although, it would be better than cutoffs if it were a word. Probably thinking about whether count-offs is a word at this point. This is one of those situations where even if you think it's more than 50% that count-offs is a word, you shouldn't be playing it. Like, you should be more than... You should be like 75 or 80% confident that cutoffs is a word when you're doing that. He's gonna play once now. Interesting. Or on set. I wonder what made him not go with cutoffs. Maybe just he was afraid of the overlaps because the overlaps look pretty juicy. But there really aren't that many overlaps. I mean, there are some, but it's pretty hard to hit an overlap too hard in that case. Maybe afraid of an E play. Yeah, a J play. Yeah, maybe. That would make some sense. Both of them don't have a lot of time right now, and there's still 12 tiles in the bag. Jackson plays Jill pretty quickly. Could have played. Oh, that's not his rack. He's playing Jill in that spot because he wants to set the QI spot for himself. It is worth noting that Josh should be able to pick up on this, though. Like, the fact that Jackson played Jill in that location should scream Q. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Why would you play Jill in that location if you don't have the Q? You're giving your opponent a free Q spot. So that is something Josh should be looking at very, very carefully and strongly consider blocking, especially considering he has the X. That being said, he has the X himself, yeah. Pax seems like a play to make quickly. Where does Pax play quickly? I think it's just AX he's gonna play quickly. Oh, yeah, Pax underneath Zaire. Yeah, maybe he could do that quickly. Felix just to play Axe underneath. Pretty similar plays. I don't really see a great reason to play one or the other. Jackson's gonna. Well, Jackson drew the U, so he's not necessarily gonna drop his Q anymore. Yeah, he's gonna play Quay most of the time. Again, very difficult for me to see the end of Jackson's rack. Quay IBN, okay. Oh, so he has Yankee in theory. Yeah, probably just Quay. Could consider BAY as well, but no, probably just Quay. Or Quay, it's key, obviously. Like, I've been to plenty of keys. Brings me back to my Donkey Kong days of Creme Key. That's exactly how I learned what that word was. Playing Donkey Kong Country 2. Okay, both players, again, not much time. There's 3 in the bag. From Josh's perspective, the pool is this. Pretty commanding position, actually, for Josh, but he is probably going to have to empty the bag most of the time. He's just going to be looking at what are Jackson's best reasonable plays. He still has put-offs, which he had cut-offs later, or lined up earlier. So he could leave one in the bag and play put-offs. That's at least a good option. Should be considered strongly. Could empty the bag and make some other plays that would make some sense. Something like Quate would make sense. Quate being better than Quare because of the underlaps. He has Court and he's lined up as well. And he actually ends up playing. At least P is an overlap. PEA. Now, Oi. I can't tell what that last tile is. Is that another O? So Jackson's down 26. A, B, E, O, P, D. So is that a D on Jackson's rack or an O? I can't really tell. It probably doesn't matter. It's an O, okay. With the O, he's pretty screwed. The D probably has some hope, but Jackson is O, yeah. I think it's an O too, but I'm not 100% sure. Okay, yeah, we just saw it a little bit better. That's an O. That looks like an O for sure. So obviously they're looking for out in twos. There's not anything great. And the first thing that should come to mind is Boa here, and that's going to leave Anion and Anion. So at least Anion in 2 spots. That ain't going to be enough. I think Jackson knows it's not going to be enough. It's not exactly a hard endgame for Josh to play either. He just plays Dab. Nalway fits in the same spot. Keeps NOB, but again, just loses to Dab, and Dab is something that Josh is going to find every single time. So he might be looking at making some weirder plays that are worse, but maybe a little bit harder for Josh to play. That being said, I'm not sure that those exist. Like, yeah, what's he gonna really do here? You're looking in these sorts of situations to make the game as hard as possible for your opponent. So Dab is 31 points and gonna be spotted every single time. And so you don't really want to be giving your opponent that as the winning play. So like you might even play something like Anion first, even though it's obviously worse, just because it makes things a little bit harder. But it doesn't really make things that much harder. Plays a Boon. I'm not certain what he's trying to accomplish. He's only has 13 seconds left. He just has to make a decision. He played Nab himself. Okay, he's playing Nab, and then he's giving himself Nalway as the overlap, hoping that Josh misses it. That's probably the best option. Not gonna get missed very often, but there's not really much to hope for here. Hoping maybe Josh will panic and see an outplay somewhere else and then block that, and then you can play Nalway as the overlap outplay. But obviously, Josh has plenty of plays. He doesn't even need it, need necessarily to find it. He can play Pad, I think, and probably still win. Although, actually, that doesn't win, does it? That's kind of his out. He's hoping that Pad comes down. Oh, it's not even his rack. Yeah, okay. So Pad does come down, and yeah, no, I got his rack wrong. And then he's just, yeah, screwed, basically. Plays Jillian, because he has nothing, and he's no time. And Josh plays Dobe and out. Probably thinking for a minute whether Dobe was good, because Dobe hasn't been good for that long, but is indeed a word. So Josh wins small, so now spread does not matter at all. Jackson just needs to win the last game. It's just that simple.
Yeah.
So bad.
Yeah, Dobe is just a different version of Adobe.
Well, I guess you didn't win.
Or Adobe.
Whoever wins straight up.
Yeah.
MCF, a Jackson supporter. Probably a road game, MCF. I'm gonna guess most of these are Josh's supporters, considering that this is Josh's channel.
I'm gonna have this thing snap.
No, like I'm 5 and 5, 5.5, and you're 4.5. So if I won by a lot and you won by a little, I would still have won the series. Is what I'm saying.
Yeah. You need to win by more than the 65 this game.
5-minute nerves break. Good to know. Josh, you have zero reason to be nervous. Why does Josh need a nerves break? Who the fuck cares if you win? Jackson's the only one who has anything at stake here. If you win, you finish in last still.
I'll have Bogus.
I guess Josh doesn't want to go 0-3 on his own stream. I guess I can understand that.
It's weird when you played No, I had all 3 eyes.
But I don't think your viewers want to watch Noah
Instead of just leaving it.
and Sid if
I
it's
kept
going to
the
be
H
6-1
revealed,
again.
I thought it was so sneaky.
And it might
and
be.
So good.
You get the H?
We'll see. Might not be. Ray, actually in Scrabble, most tiles have black backs. People don't like using the normal wooden tiles in Scrabble because they fear that other players can braille them. They feel that when they draw, that they can feel the grooves in the tiles, and as such, make determinations on which tiles to draw. Particularly looking for tiles that don't have grooves at all, because those are blanks. So for those reasons, we generally don't use wooden tiles when we play Scrabble. We generally use plastic ones, where there is no groove. And as a result, most of them are hollow and have black backs. In fact, almost all of them do. If you want those tiles with black backs, they come from a site called, the major distributor is called Pro Tiles. It's just pro and then tiles.com. They sell Scrabble tiles that have, it's called plastic Scrabble tiles, which is generally what we use in tournaments. Obviously, in this case, nobody's going to be brailing, and usually if you braille, you either have to be extremely good at it, or you have to spend a lot of time brailing, and in which case it's really obvious, but better just to avoid the issue entirely. All right, I'm going to take a break quickly, too. We'll be back in roughly 2 minutes.
But time to shit in my fridge. It's awesome.
Yeah, and I don't think, there are some tiles that are not black, I guess. Some of them are the same color that the front of the tiles are, so maybe, some of them might be yellow if they're playing with yellow tiles, for example, but most of them are black. This does kind of remind me about how we may need to think about what we're going to do if we run into distribution problems, which we might, because I mean, I have no problem using wooden tiles, really. I don't think it's necessary to use plastic tiles. As long as people are not being ridiculous about how they draw, which some people are, to be fair, but
Well, oh, right. End of the game. I thought I was fucked after, like, Zaire and Gurus.
people have different habits and different superstitions about drawing. I was like that for a little while. I would used to, not necessarily superstition, but one of the interesting things was thinking about for a while
Alright,
is,
let's do this.
well, if you put the tiles at the beginning of the game, you have to put all the tiles in the bag, and if you put the blanks in last, do they really fall randomly into the middle of the bag, or can you just drop off the top? And if you can drop it off the top, then I feel like you have an obligation to really mix the tiles in a way such that they reach the bottom. Whereas if you put them in the bottom, maybe you should be drawing in the corners. So I feel like distributing the tiles randomly is something that deserves some attention and deserves some thought. I was more paranoid about that because at the beginning of me being a good player, I ran absolutely terribly for the first, I don't know, 5 tournaments or so. I was just not drawing blanks. And so I was thinking about, okay, why am I not drawing blanks? And it wasn't turnover, and it wasn't to a degree of turnover. It was pretty low variance. Next 3 tournaments after I became a good player, I think I drew roughly 30% of the blanks over 100 games, which is pretty awful if you look at the binomial distribution. It's roughly 3 standard deviations off. So usually when something's 3 standard deviations off, you look for other explanations because usually people are not that unlucky. So things things got to a more reasonable distribution after that, but it took some time. And those 3 tournaments that I was at were the last 3 tournaments where Money in Scrabble was good, where we were on television. So, it's kind of a bummer, but what are you gonna do? But for those of you who don't know, we were on television in the early 2000s. From 2003 to 2006 roughly, which is around the time that I was becoming good at the game. I started entering Scrabble at around the early 2000s, so I'd been playing for about 2 or 3 years at that point. Wasn't any good until about 2004, 2005, something around there. And at that point, I was actually a pretty good player, but just could not draw blanks to save my freaking life. So I would never do very well. People thought I wasn't very good, but no one's gonna feel sympathy for you drawing no blanks, just like no one's gonna feel sympathy for you in other games that have luck elements that are intrinsic. But if you don't draw at least 40% of the blanks, you're not winning tournaments. The players are just too good. Because you're not competing against people who are drawing 50% of the blanks. You're competing against people who are drawing 60 or more. So you can live drawing less blanks, but you can't draw so many less blanks that it's that substantial. Anyway, Josh to start. Looks like they're on their way. And not a very good rack for Josh to start. He's going to probably play Danio. He could exchange as well. But yeah, it's either exchanging AOO, keeping ADIN, or playing Danio. Probably vertically because it's Josh. Jackson's rack, not great either. 60. Danio does come down. I somewhat like how the TV show Countdown draws letters consonants and vowels from separate piles. Yeah, we thought about different things that we could use to draw tiles. Jackson's just going to drop the Q here. Josh with the K draw, near some pretty decent things. Has some okay options here. Cora's being the high scoring one. I may be a little bit afraid of Cora's. I actually wasn't even 100% sure because of Korai being a plural, but it is a word. If you don't like it or aren't sure of it, there's always Nook, which sets up your S, so that's actually a pretty good option too. Might even be better than Cora's, actually. And yeah, other options not too worth considering. I guess Karoo is not terrible. Not sure what Josh is thinking about here. Maybe just considering between Koras and Nook. Maybe not thinking about either of that. Maybe thinking about what he's gonna have for dinner. I don't really know. He's picked up Rook. Oh, he's gonna play Karoo. Okay. Interesting. He does play Karoo. I probably would have preferred Nook or Koras there, but Karoo seems at least... Karoo's probably the next best play, and it seems at least okay. Jackson already has wrong lined up in his rack. I think it's wrong EF. Maybe EP, actually. Gonna guess wrong's gonna come down pretty quickly. Not too many alternatives here. I guess you can think about Prow. But no, he is gonna play wrong. Josh with several options here. No bingos, but several reasonable options. Take the points with something like Wises. He could also just take a more balanced approach, sacrifice some points to try to bingo and play something like Saw. Oh, he's gonna try a waniness. Oh boy. Well, Jackson's held, I assume. Didn't snap challenge. It's a courtesy draw motion, so it's not... Jackson hasn't accepted yet. Jackson does challenge, and it's coming off.
Oh, that wasn't Collins, sorry. But yeah. Well,
So we're in one of those positions where, again, Jackson knows his entire rack and is going to play accordingly. He knows that Wises and Saws are all options, so he's not too concerned about blocking any specific one thing. Oh, he has lip... Okay, I got his rack wrong. Oh, so now he really doesn't care. Wise, ANS. Yeah. And Josh is holding now, because Lippind isn't something that is terribly obvious to be a word. Jackson's courtesy drawing. Pretty sure he's still on hold, though. Lippind is a word. The thing, Chodowski, is that, yeah, I know I'm looking forward to that day too, but that might be a long time off for a lot of reasons. It's actually harder in a lot of ways, or at least different, to build a Scrabble engine, even relative to a chess engine, because of the probabilistic aspect and because of the game history information aspect. It makes Scrabble very difficult, even in some very simple instances, to run properly. Just like the 6 pass rule, for example, at the beginning of the game, just having something that can handle that is pretty freaking difficult. We can talk off stream about it if you want, but like, yeah, getting a bot that can even figure out like what to do in opening turn 6-pass scenarios is, which a human intuition would say is pretty easy, is actually very difficult. And obviously the game just gets more complicated from there. So if the computer can't even figure that out, I don't know if we're gonna have an engine anytime soon that's any good. Almost Talith for Jackson. Yeah, he's not too concerned about that. Assuming that's an H. I assume it's an H. I'm not 100% sure it's an H. Yeah, I'm assuming too. It looks like it's an H. It could be a Y from my perspective, but yeah, it looks more like an H than a Y. Probably is an H. Yeah, it's complicated, Tadovsky. It's really complicated. We can't even. There's lots of issues. It's much. Just because we can come up with chess, and just because chess is a more complicated game per se than Scrabble, doesn't mean that creating a engine is equally easy in both games, or that we're equally close to solving either game. Okay, Josh does accept. Plays Slaw. Giving away the fact that, well, I mean, Jackson knows his entire rack, so it doesn't really matter. So Jackson still is in a position that he knows everything about Josh's rack. He knows EINS. He knows he's going to probably want to be blocking the S hook somewhat. But doesn't know the whole rack in this position. Might be a little bit more willing than normal to play something like Lothy. Just because he knows that Josh doesn't have a high point tile that goes there, and that it doesn't really go neatly above. So Lothy opening the triple is a little bit better than usual because he knows there's no ES that goes there. He has to bingo specifically ending in E. And that is a pretty good line for the remaining TL blank stuff. So that's at least a reasonable option. There are other options too. You could just play hit, you could play doll. But given that he knows Jackson's or Josh's rack, and given what he has, Lothy actually seems like a pretty good option here. Now, he does elect to go with hit instead. Reasonable as well. But normally I would be playing hit. I think given what I know about Josh's rack, I think I might be willing to play Lothy instead. Josh plays Sizey almost immediately. Not too far away from Synesthesis. Which obviously isn't going to ever get played because it's extremely rare, but yeah. I sound a little bit quiet to you? Maybe. I need to be louder. Okay, I can turn up the volume a little bit. Is this better or? All right. Sorry about that. I can change a little bit. I don't have full control over volume, but hopefully that's at least a little bit better. Still don't know what Jackson's exact rack is. I think it's... Is it Aeellty? Like Staley? Yeah, okay. Checking some of my I don't know what my catchphrases necessarily are. I have a few, but I don't really use them on stream too much. You know, have a cookie. Nice play, have a cookie. I say that sometimes. I don't know what catchphrases I have. Pretty standard. Yeah, pretty standard is a catchphrase, but it's not a good one. I need to like artificially create catchphrases. That's fair. He's alertly set up. Yeah, I expect alertly. It can come down in either spot, to be honest. Both of them are fine. Josh's rack is pretty bad. Josh is in a lot of trouble, obviously. He's going to be down by over 100, and his rack is not conducive to making up a large deficit. Although brevity is going to come down probably from Josh, which will help a little bit. Gets rid of his entire rack and scores pretty well, but yeah. Yeah, Tadowski, the only person who's working on an engine whatsoever is the people who made Wiggles. And by the people who made Wiggles, I mean specifically Cesar. We're not going to get anybody to help us to do anything in Scrabble.
21, 57, 135, 1.
I don't know if there was another spot that was better, Brenjam. The AD spot next to Lippind is the alternative. I'm not saying that's necessarily better, but it's worth considering for a variety of reasons. Yeah, that's what I was saying. The other alert leads. I mean, this scores 3 more points. That's why you're playing it, but the other one has some positional benefits that probably cancel out. They're probably pretty close to equal. I can imagine Josh being pretty tilted at this point, given the way that this game has gone with waniness and Lippind, and then not knowing whether Lippind was a word or not. Now this, he's behind by a lot. But if he wants to win the game, he has to find brevity here, I think. Yeah, he has to find it. It's just the best play by a ton. There's nothing even remotely okay. And he doesn't find it. Or yeah, that's just a lot worse. He has to find brevity. It probably isn't going to matter even. He's in a pretty bad situation. Is that Naspa's Scrabble personality or Cesar? Yeah, it is. Josh plays vibe. That's just a miss. There's no real other way to say that. I'm sure you would have played brevity if you saw it. Jackson is a B away from Aboy 2. Means his rack isn't very good, but also, yeah. But he's up by over 100. He's up by 100. He's gonna be up by over 100 after this turn. Basically, do you leave the Y open and play something like out eat, or do you block it and play something like AA? That is what you are thinking about in this position. And you can make a case for both. You can make a pretty strong case for both. He has out eat lined up. I probably would play out eat here. But I totally understand why anybody would play AA. And mostly it's just stylistic more than anything. By stylistic, I mean that I could justify the other play, but I wouldn't make it. And by that I mean I actually think it's better, but yeah. Hulp? Nope, he looks like he's gonna play. Oh, he plays AE. Might actually be better than AA. Yeah, I like it. A is probably a pretty good tile on this board. E's not so great. There's 8 E's still. Yeah, probably AE is good. Probably prefer that to AA. Still might play out E, but seems good. I am expecting turn to come out. Maybe he'll play dent. Probably gonna play turn. Yeah, 2 more vowels. Kind of one of the reasons you play out E, but not that big a deal. The difference between turn and is basically, would you rather have this T lane when you have a T, or would you rather have an S lane that you don't have? Oh, he plays entire. Interesting. Really? Okay. Not standard there at all. Keeping a much worse leave.
26.
But trying to get S's and, one of the S's or the blank. I mean, he does need something good to happen to him if he wants to win here. So Jackson plays shoe. And draws 2 more vowels. But 26 points, so he's up 130. Okay, Josh with a nice find of abutment. And ends up playing abutment. He could have also played Buckaroo this turn as an extension to Karoo. Maybe a little bit better, but a really tough find, and abutment looks like it's got to be the best play, but I actually think that the best play is probably Buckaroo here. Yeah, no, that wasn't an S, Joey. It's a C. But yeah. Buckaroo probably still a slightly better play. Mostly a better leaves, a few more points, a better board shape. You really want to open the top left here, and Buckaroo does that. So actually a small miss here, despite the fact it's a really hard find. I don't know if I would have found this in game. I certainly didn't find it given the amount of time that I had. But abutment comes down. Jackson plays Obia pretty quickly. And Josh has Docetic, which is going to hook Obia, so this is now going to be competitive. Obia looks like it blocks, and it does for most things, but actually made Docetic playable. He does have to find it, yes. He does have to know it. He probably does. The fact that he hasn't played it yet scares me. A lot. Usually these plays, they come down instantaneously. As in, already. As in, within 10 seconds. As in, I don't think he's going to play it anymore, because if he would have played it, he would have played it by now. As it turns out, Jackson has Dotties, I think, so he's screwed. But Docetic is not something that somebody takes a minute and a half and then plays. You play it immediately. You see it immediately. You don't take, what is it? He's taken 30 whole seconds to play this. I know that 30 seconds doesn't seem like a lot of time, but at this level, you see Docetic quickly. And I don't think he's finding it anymore. I would bet against him finding it. As it stands, like I said, Jackson has Dotties, so it doesn't matter too much. But yeah, Josh looks annoyed. He doesn't look like he's looking for it. And he sees the C hook, and he's going to play Audic. And that's going to be pretty much a game. Yeah, that's pretty much game. Auric and then Dottie's. Not like he had much of a chance after Dottie's anyway, but I'm assuming that Dottie's is on Jackson's rack. But yeah, if I was Sid, I would not be happy with this game. This is not Josh's best game. Some of these racks were difficult. Buckaroo was legitimately difficult, but yeah, Dottie's comes down. Josh's rack is complete garbage. Yeah. Gonna be flex. Yeah, there's no way he's coming back from this. There's let's see, 16 in the bag from his perspective. He needs to bingo 3 times. It's not gonna happen. There are blank. There is a blank. There is an S. There is some potential for bingos, but not enough to come back. Jackson's rack isn't good, but it's good enough. Like he's gonna score. He's gonna use that J and hit 25. He's gonna hit the H and score 25. So yeah, pretty much over. So it's going to be Jackson versus Noah in the finals. Josh plays Fecal. Probably just trying to hit some miracle that isn't coming. He does draw the blank, but Hodge comes down and he doesn't have the eye, and Jackson does. So yeah, it's pretty rough. No, Jackson's doing this in large part because he has the eye, but he doesn't actually even care if Josh has it, because if Josh has it, then he's going to have to score, and that's one turn that he's not bingoing. So, from Jackson's perspective, the fact that it creates an eye hook is doubly good, because if Josh has it, he's perfectly okay with that. The only thing he's not okay with is a bingo that also hooks the eye, and that's just so unlikely. Yeah, Josh has nothing great. He has 4x as a fancy play that looks nice. Not going to win him the game, but looks nice. Just EX. You learned fecal vomiting exists. Wonderful. Fantastic. One of the issues that we have with Scrabble with the define bot that we may have to change is the fact that we have some very gross words that we don't really want, especially in school Scrabble streams, for people to define. So, for example, we can imagine having like a bunch of 14-year-olds playing Scrabble with a bunch of parents on screen, and then having people define words like this, for example. And just, yeah. Yeah, it's one of the problems we have that people don't necessarily like the concept of. Josh is playing F. I'm not sure what he's doing. He's probably just setting up his X for play next turn. He'll probably get it, but Jackson doesn't care. Yeah, he's just gonna take Rei probably. But yeah, he has a slew of choices. He could block if he wants. Be perfectly fine to. Yeah, anything wins basically. He does block. There's not really a reason to, but sure. There's no bingo here. Again, the eye spot is still open. not really much for Josh to do. But yeah, this is over. It's going to be Noah versus Jackson in the finals. Josh will not be happy when he learns how he played this game, I'm sure. But he's tilted. He will admit he's tilted. And I can't even see it, but I'm sure he's playing naive. Which does take an S, by the way. It's one of those S hooks that doesn't show up very often, but yeah. Just to kind of like grope at Josh. He's probably never going to get the bingo either, by the way. In fact, Jackson just emptied the bag, and ENRT does not come in. There will be no bingo. So, yeah. Anyway, this is kind of a slaughter. Could play something like Growler, something like Tenrek. At least these are kind of like... For Josh's ego, I hope he finds one of the higher scoring plays. Like Tenrek, Growler, something like that. But, yeah, not the best game. Yeah, Josh made... I'm looking over this game. Josh made one play that I agreed with the entire game. Which happens sometimes. He made some plays that were, even if I didn't agree with, that were reasonable. Like, I wouldn't have played Slaw, but it's fine. I wouldn't have played Danio, but it's fine. You know, they're good enough, but... You know, Danio's just picking... You know, it's just nitpicking. Sizey was obviously the best play. Okay, it looks like he's gonna find Growler. No, he's gonna play Erg. Erg might be good too, actually. Let's see. Actually, interestingly, the best play is playing Erg with the blank as an E. But he plays, you know, Jackson plays Gums. And Josh goes out with Trine. But because of the fact that Trine, you know, he goes out with Train. Because of the fact that Trine goes there, though, and hits the double, then that would mean that playing the blank as an E last turn was slightly better. But it doesn't really matter. Noah and Jackson are in the finals, Wanderer.
300, 497?
Yep.
Good game.
Everybody finished 2-1, but the tiebreaker was number of wins. Jackson has the most number of wins, and Noah has the second most number of wins. Noah had to beat Sid by more than by at least 6-4, I think. 6-3 would have been a tie, but it was 6-1 or 6-2. So Noah passed Sid on wins, and Jackson passed everybody on wins. So it's gonna be Noah and Jackson. But yeah. This was 5.5, 5.5. Jackson won on spread by a pretty hefty margin, actually, almost 200, over 200.
So bad. Like 95%.
This game and 2 games ago were both blowouts. So he won by 200, over 200 this game, and almost 200 2 games ago. Note that in terms of rating, if anybody cares, Sid would have been the only person in this tournament, I think, who gained rating. I'm going to guess that both Jackson and Noah, despite the fact that they're in the finals, have lost rating based on the ratings going into this tournament. Josh has certainly lost rating. But That is how it goes sometimes.
Hola. Hola, hola.
Hello.
How's it going?
It's going alright. I did not like your play this game
Oh,
at all.
really?
You made one play I agreed with the
Danio?
entire game. No, Sicey.
Wait, you didn't like Danio?
I would have exchanged.
You would have exchanged.
Danio was fine. Danio was fine. Like some of them are nitpicking, but yeah. Danio was okay. Like there was a few plays that were okay.
Okay, wait, let's
else
go
was
through
okay?
it. So Danio you would have exchanged. I figured you might say that.
Yeah.
Korra's I chickened out of.
Yeah, and Nook is better as well.
Nook? Oh, it's set up the S.
Yeah.
Nice.
Um,
Then waniness
Waniness,
I thought
obviously.
was a word, obviously.
Yeah. I would have catched the S with Saw. Or something like that instead of Slaw.
Okay.
Slide
What
Z
about
was
wises is what I was thinking of doing.
Yeah, Wisest would be fine too. But not Slaw.
Lippind is good.
Yeah, Lippind is good.
Nice.
Sizey was correct, I'll give you that.
Yay. Well,
Vibe,
this isn't
you
about
missed...
being correct, Kenji. Let's just make that clear. Like,
yeah, I got that. Vibe, you missed brevity.
Oh, nice.
Entire, I would just play turn. It's not worth it.
Yeah, just like where am I being going? You know.
Abutment, you missed Buckaroo. Although Abutment's a nice play. It's the second best play, but you missed Buckaroo.
Buckaroo, nice. Okay.
Arek, you had Tosetic.
Okay.
So you were actually in the game until then, and then you missed the bingo.
Right.
Yeah. Sokol, you should just play Flex. You're not winning anyway, I guess, so it doesn't matter.
Flex and Ox?
Flex, on the right side of Dottie's, just take the 40 and go.
What? Oh, okay. Whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, and obviously F, and yeah.
F was just funny.
It's just,
I was like, you know what? You're setting your eyes up? Fuck off. I'll set my shit up.
In the end game, you're actually supposed to use the blank as the E, but that's just nitpicking.
Okay.
You're supposed to make blank RG and then play try in and out.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is not your best play game.
Well, I just checked out like after winning.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you.
Yeah.
After the beginning sequence, you just checked out. You actually had a chance until you missed Docetic.
Yeah. Docetic, like I don't even know if I would have played it if I'd seen it.
Okay.
That's how unfamiliar it is. But I mean, I've seen it before. Yeah, wait, what happened? Why is the title wrong?
Will changed it.
Why was it wrong? What did it say?
I don't know.
Okay, guys.
Oh, the dollar sign, I think he... Yeah, the dollar sign he changed.
Alright, tomorrow. This money is on the line. This is second place prize. This is first place prize. It's American dollars, even though we're in Canada. And it's Jackson. Wait, is it? Yeah, it's Jackson versus Noah.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be great.